Hello, everyone. If you can take your seats, that'd be great. Thank you. Welcome to the debut of the museum's new Rakow Commission by Amber Cowan, Garden of the Forgotten and Extinct. Thank you, Amber, for all of you who saw that before the lecture. And you will have another chance after the lecture when we have coffee and dessert in the landing. You'll be able to see it again. The museum's Rakow Commission is an annual award that was inaugurated in 1986 by museum benefactors Dr. and Mrs. Leonard S. Rakow. Over the years, Rakow Commission recipients have ranged from emerging to established artists. Currently, the commission is awarded to professional artists from the United States and abroad whose work is not yet represented in the museum's collection. I was very pleased to award the museum's 29th Rakow Commission to Amber. I first became acquainted with her work in 2010 when she was a student at the Tyler School of Art at Temple University in Philadelphia, and welcome to all the Tyler students who are here tonight. What attracted me to her work originally, and still intrigues me, is her use of a kind of glass that she describes as, quote, being abandoned to the dustbin of American design. This abandoned glass is of a type everyone knows, and it is found everywhere. The ubiquitous, mass-produced pressed glass dishes and tableware that were made in the United States primarily between the 1940s and 1980s. For me, Amber was a perfect candidate for the Rakow Commission. For this commission, I have sometimes picked artists whose work is clearly contemporary, but who also help us understand different aspects of the history of glass. For this purpose, I am not looking for work that replicates earlier styles, but rather work that interprets or contextualizes them in new ways. Thus, we had Josiah McElhaney's Homage to Modernism in 2000, Isabel de Obaldia's Exploration of the Primitive in 2009, and sculptures by Deborah Moore and Stefan Dahm in 2007 and 2012 that reflected the influence of the 19th century Bohemian glassmakers Leopold and Rudolf Blaschka. In creating this commission, Amber was inspired by historical pieces in the museum's collections, such as the Mechanical Theater and the Portable Shrine, made in France during the 18th century, which are both on exhibit in the European Glass Gallery, and I hope you have a chance to see those. She says that she enjoys looking and re-looking at the numerous glass figures and elaborate glass and shell decorations of these objects. In them, she experiences what she describes as hidden moments, which she hopes people will discover in the Rakow Commission. Through the remaking and recontextualization of mid-20th century American pressed glass, Amber's art references consumption, reuse, and the history of the glass industry. Her work also reflects contemporary concerns about object making, and I appreciate her fresh take on the potential of what she describes as recycled, upcycled, and second life glass. Amber's sculptures begin as whole or broken wares that she picks up at thrift shops, roadside antique malls, flea markets, eBay, or which she collects from cullet dumps. Sometimes she combines old glass with new, or as in the case of the museum's Rakow Commission, she uses only vintage glass that she has repurposed. She reheats, flame works, hot sculpts the glass into tiny leaves, fruits, swans, roses, and abstract spirals, bits, and spikes, giving the discarded glass a new, cool life, transforming it by destroying it and reforming it into beautiful and evocatively retro sculptures. In addition to her practice as an independent artist, Amber is an adjunct professor at the Tyler School of Art. She's represented by Heller Gallery in New York City, and she recently opened a solo show, Amber Cowan, Second Life Glass, at the Museum of Craft and Design in San Francisco. Amber graduated from Salisbury University in Maryland with a BFA in three-dimensional design in 2004, and she earned her MFA in ceramics and glass at Tyler in 2011. She has taught alongside and assisted many well-known artists, including master flame workers Paul Stankard, Gianni Toso, Lucio Bubacco, and Emilio Santini. She has also taught glass blowing and flame working at 160 Glass, Urban Glass, and at our very own studio. In 2012, Amber was awarded the Stephen Proctor Fellowship from the Australian National University in Canberra, Australia, and the Steve Stormer Memorial Award from Temple University. She was also one of the featured artists in the Toledo Workshop Revisited, 1962 to 2012, a documentary film produced by the Robert N. Minkoff Foundation. Please welcome Amber Cowan.
Hi. It's quite an intimidating room, this huge screen. So I first want to just thank a couple people. First off, my parents, all four of them who are here, who have supported me, since I've started making blobs, and making blobs for a long time. So also the Tyler School of Art, particularly Sharon O'Mara, who's also been very supportive of me for the last 5 years, and my assistant Corinne McFadden, who helped me a lot with the Rakow Commission. So, also I feel like I grew up in coming to the Corning Museum and taking classes at the studio. I think that I've TA'd 8 classes and taught one and was a student of one, Bill Gunrath, here since I was about probably 21 years old. So I feel like I grew up here, and Corning has and will always be my favorite museum. So I walked into the Heinemann today and saw the piece up, and it was really surreal. So just want to start out. I was kind of one of those lucky people. I knew when I was a young girl that I wanted to work with glass. I found these little pink elephant swizzle stick drink stirrers in my parents' basement cabinet. They're frosted little elephants. And I was probably 7 years old, and I really just loved them and needed to know how to make them. So I went to undergrad at a school called Salisbury University in Maryland, and I got my degree in three-dimensional design with a concentration in glass. So that school was very fresh in its beginning of their glass program. I believe that I was probably the first woman to get my glass-related degree from there. During that time, there wasn't very many serious students in glass, so I actually applied to transfer to the Tyler School of Art as an undergrad and was denied. Thank you. Because my life wouldn't have been the same if I transferred then, but I think that that's a good story for the students. But what I did go instead was do their study abroad program in Rome, and there I met one of my best friends who was living in New York City. So as soon as I got back, I moved to New York, and I worked for this woman named Michiko Sakano, who owned a studio called 160 Glass in New York. And for 2 years, I was the shop girl. I charged the furnace, I helped her blow glass, did a lot of odd jobs around the studio. I worked at Urban Glass. I bartended. I had a lot of different jobs. I made cufflinks for a company that had a very good PR team. And so I lived in New York for 5 years and really learned a lot about business and met a lot of people, but wasn't really able to make my own work. But at that time, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of different artists who I was able to be the teaching assistant for, who've been a huge inspiration for me in my career. In particular, Paul Stankard, who has been a mentor along my path. After grad school, I ended up working for him. I was actually the bee maker for a while. It is very difficult, by the way. And then also Gianni Toso, who I've TA'd for many, many times, and Lucio Babacco. So I show these three artists because those these three artists in particular have the most to do with my technical style. I am a soft glass flame worker, which is a type of glass that is a more old-fashioned type of way to flame work. And these three men, and also Amelia Santini, have been very influential for the style of flame working that I do. So that's how, and you can see a lot of the techniques that I've gathered from them along the years in my pieces now. I wanted to add a little bit about maybe earlier influences just briefly. And I was starting to think about this. I kind of forgot, but I remember when I was a little girl that these two books had a huge influence on me, and I think that I can still see it. So, Where's Waldo? I remember I actually used to make my own Where's Waldo books. And this book, Balloonia, which is a land of all balloons. And it's just jam-packed with stuff. And, you know, now I heard, you know, there's a technical art term for that, which is the horror vacui, or fear of empty space, which I didn't realize I was until someone pointed it out, but I am, okay. And then some later influences, which I think that you could see now in my work. The grottos and of the Boboli Gardens in Florence were always a really big influence for me. How they just kind of grow out of this wall and this monochrome pattern, and then also they're kind of creepy when you look at them. You almost get the chills. And some contemporary artists, including Eva Hess, Petta Coyne, Tara Donovan, who all, are these strong female sculptors who use materials and transform them and make larger collections out of these objects. And finally, the painter Agnes Martin, who, I'm not sure if you would really ever see this in my work, but I feel like the most inspiration I get is probably looking at one of her paintings or at her room at Dia Beacon. So I had to put her in there. My second year in grad school, I really came into kind of my style that I really found. And it was with this piece, kind of like my turning point piece in graduate school. And this piece is called The Revelation of a Serket, and it's actually inserted into the wall and kind of goes back in this depth. And I made this piece out of all Venetian glass, and there's a lot of hidden objects in here as well, scorpions, legs, and all kinds of things like that. And after I made this piece, I really wanted to go larger and more sculptural with my pieces, but I was honestly really spending a lot of money on material, and I was trying to just find a different way. And at that time, behind the furnaces at Tyler, I found this barrel of glass that looks kind of like what I'm digging through there. And it was this amazing pink color, and it was just sitting there. No one was using it. It was probably there since John Clark ran the program. And I said, I just want to try this. So I put it in the kiln and tried it, and it worked just like the glass that I was using already. But it was this beautiful, fleshy, intense color. And so I dumped the barrel out and started doing some research on it, and found that it was originally made as old Fenton rabbit and chicken candy dishes for Easter. And so I made this piece, and I tried to save, you can see some of the rabbits in there, tucked up in there. So I reform a lot of the glass and save some of it in its original state. So this was kind of the piece taking my style and then this concept and kind of into one. This is actually a later piece, but I put it in here because it was the same kind of color scheme. And at my thesis show at Tyler, this piece is called Milk, and it was made of all this old milk glass. Particularly this corner piece, you can see an example. So as I started using this glass, I started getting more into figuring out the history of the material and kind of starting to do some research about what I was using. If you see on the right-hand corner in the bottom, there's a stamp. And I found that in the barrels of cullet or broken glass from the factory I was using, there were particular stamps. And I found that those stamps were essentially signatures of the gaffers at the factory. So on the Fenton website, I could find that this particular stamp was from John Smith from 1940 to 1970, and then it was found in the same barrel as another stamp of a man who worked at the same time. So I could essentially start kind of narrowing down and dating the glass that I could use, or was using. This was another piece at the show, and then this piece I actually put up at the show in San Francisco right now too. I love it, but it's kind of scary, so and very difficult to put up. After I started using this glass, I was actually teaching at Salem Community College in New Jersey. I was teaching flame working there, and I had this woman who was a farmer's wife there, who was a friend of mine and also a very good artist, and she was really interested in my process and used to bring me in material. She was kind of my first donator of material, and she brought me this, and I just love this. It's still kind of my favorite picture, even though my name is spelled wrong. My last name's. It kind of sums up, what I was trying to do, or what I was starting to do with the glass. And I thought, once I started using this material, it kind of just opened this door, and I didn't really realize that I was stuck inside of something until I found it. And I said, well, if I can use this, why can't I really use anything? So I started making these very kind of crude little milk glass. I call them reconstructions. Or I think the series I named them was Reincarnate to Wreckage, because they're kind of reincarnated, but they still look like disheveled or something. So I was starting to flame work these and then pick them up and put them back together in the hot shop. And a lot of these are just like vases you could get at the 99-cent store or thrift market. And you've probably all seen one of these little vases for $1 at the thrift store, and I flame worked a lot of the animal. And this was actually made out of two lampshades, two hobnail lampshades. So hobnail is that kind of bumpy pattern along a lot of that old historic milk glass. Teacups. This piece is actually not using the old glass. It was just another piece that I was doing in that style at that time. But people like this picture, I think. This piece is called Peach Blow Away, and my friends were working down at Wheaton, and they were actually melting some of this old glass called peach blow glass, which is a historic color. And generally, peach blow goes from like a pink and then blends into a white or a cream. And they were using some old, I believe it to be Fenton. They pulled me a bunch of cane out of the glass pot at Wheaton, and I made this piece. It's kind of funny because the piece, or peach blow, was very, very popular at one point in history. There was even a town named Peach Blow, Colorado. And now if you Google peach blow, I believe that this image is one of the ones that comes up, which is so weird, at least on my computer, you know. You never know about Google. So, the detail from that. This piece was made, I named this piece Avon Goes Goth, because I found this whole deep red, heavy glass, and I was like, I want to make a piece with this, but I want to make it super goth. And I was doing some research on the glass, and it turns out that this glass was actually an Avon product. So can you just imagine the little Avon ladies, like, trying to sell this super deep blood red glass? And this was another piece from that series I did. And one of the unfortunate things about the glass I'm using now is that this piece in particular, the Avon glass, because I do use some of it, and I'll show you in the piece I have here, there are some Avon pieces as well. This piece was filled with bubble bath, and having to clean out 50-year-old bubble bath or perfume is like the most horrifying thing you could do. So this was the original glass line, and this was Avon, the Avon 1876 Cape Cod collection. So the Cape Cod line was actually produced for Avon and was based off an old Boston and Sandwich Glass Company pattern. And this was actually produced at Avon, or at Wheaton. So if you can see on the right-hand corner, those candlesticks are actually perfume bottles that you screw off and then spritz yourself with. That's why there's a lot of it in thrift stores now, because I don't know who ever bought this. But I had the opportunity to go to Australia. I did a really amazing fellowship called the Stephen Proctor Fellowship at the Australian National University. And, I had wrote this whole proposal about using historic glass from Australia and all this stuff, and they went with it. But what I found out after I got over there was that they don't really have the same kind of history of factories that we do. So I was living on a college campus, literally you walk through the fibers department, and there was my apartment. And so I didn't really know what to use. And so the only glass that was abundant on this campus was wine and beer bottles. So that's what I used. And I made this large piece. And then I also, in Australia, started to do some fusing. I just had never really done it before, which is, I guess, maybe surprising, but no one I worked with had done a lot of that. And the university was very big into that because of Klaus Moye, who was a founder of the glass program at that school. So I started making these fused pieces so this is just out of wine and beer bottles. And now this piece is at the Philadelphia airport until January, so it's like right behind Terminal B, so if you go in, you can see it. I'm getting more exposure from that. It's pretty cool. But when I got back from Australia, I really was more interested in using American glass, and so I found this particular pattern, and Nancy Dubois, who was my student again, had found in her old barn, all of the housewives bought a set of dishes, and then after, they had this farmhouse for generations, and each wife would put the whole set of dishes in the barn. And she ended up giving me a whole set of this white glassware, which I still use today, or not what she gave me, but I find it and reuse that. And what I found was this particular glass was a product of the Indiana Glass Company and was originally acquired through the purchase of S&H green stamps. So, you could fill up your booklet and then go get your snack set. Which, these snack sets, it's like, no one uses these things anymore. And they're just so heavy and clunky and out of date, and there are a lot of them in thrift stores. But the color of this glass is just absolutely incredible. It has the most brilliant blue hue to it. And when you go up to see the commission, the whole scalloped edge of the piece is made out of these plates, snack sets plates. And there's also teacups, and a lot of the white glass that I used in that piece is just these snack sets. So I source them I go to a lot of thrift stores, flea markets, find them on eBay. I love thrift store shopping anyway, so it played very well into my practice. And then this was a large fused milk glass basin that I made. And then these, I call them wedding compotes in Colony Harvest. So the particular pattern of this white glass is called Colony Harvest. And so I try to preserve some of the names and things of the original glass. And this was... I love the little one on the left. I think it looks like a hamburger bun. So that was just a little candy dish that I found. And then these are flame worked and then hot sculpted in the hot shop. And this is a mirror in Colony Harvest. So you can see all the scalloped edge of the, again, those plates. This piece was, I walked into the Philadelphia Museum of Art one day and looked up at the ceiling, and my piece was on the ceiling. And it was actually an old plaster ceiling rosette, but it looked just like my piece. So I made this piece in response to that. So a lot of my material comes from an old cullet yard, which cullet being after a factory does a run of glass, there's a lot of scrap material left over. And they were selling this glass, this broken shards and pieces, to this basically an old glass junkyard in West Virginia called Gabbert Cullet. And Gabbert, through research, what I found out was in the beginning of the studio glass movement, a lot of the original glass studios in the US were using glass from Gabbert before nice, clean, clear melt glass like we use today was invented. So nowadays, I'll go and this is one of my helpers on a pile of this color called chocolate that I've now made a couple pieces with. And this is what it looks like. So I go and fill up barrels and buckets of this stuff. And this is pretty much what it looks like before I use it. Just dirty bits and broken pieces. But in these piles, I generally find a lot of like hidden gems that are maybe have a little chip or a little crack so they couldn't sell them, but they throw them in this pile. This is some of the original chocolate colored glass. It was actually a very popular color. And then this is a recent piece that I made out of that. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll find a color, and then I'll research the color, and then try to find extra kind of special pieces to mix in with it. So if you see on the right-hand corner, there's a corner of a plate that I found. So that was a bicentennial plate. And you can see it says 1776 to 1976. So the plate had an eagle on it. And then I also used a vase that I found to work into the original glass. So there's a kitty. I found the kitty in the pile of broken glass. So I had my first kind of big show in 2012 with Heller Gallery in New York, and they had originally asked me to do this big niche piece that was at their old gallery down in the Meatpacking District. And I had been thinking a lot about this color Burmese and peach blow, which are very similar. And also this story about the Morgan vase, which is actually on the right. So the story of the Morgan vase is it was a ancient Chinese porcelain vase, which they called, at that time they called the color peach bloom. And there was this huge auction in 1886. This woman, Miss Mary Morgan, had this massive collection of art. So she was this wealthy shipping heir and was always very frugal. And her husband died, and in the next 2 years, she amassed the largest collection of art, go figure, in the US. So, and then she sold it, so they had this huge, elaborate auction, and the collection was called the Morgan Collection, and this is generally referred to as the Morgan vase. Well, what happened was William Walters, who owned the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, bought the piece at auction for $18,000. So in 1886, you can imagine it was just, everyone was going crazy over this bid. So it started this, he went back to Baltimore and denied the purchase, because I think he was probably embarrassed about it. And New York is saying he did it, and it started this newspaper war between the Baltimore Sun and the New York Times. And then essentially created this craze in glassware, which you can see the piece on the left is a mimic in glass of this color. So what I was saying before about the town in Colorado being named Peach Blow, Colorado, it was after this auction bid. And it just became this huge fad. Women's fashions were made out of this pink to cream or pink to yellow color scheme. There was cocktails named after it, all kinds of things. So this is actually not the best picture of it, but the piece that I made was 26 components in an ombre from the deep pink into the milk white. And I used some Fenton original Burmese and peach blow glass in it. These are some of the colors in there. And then getting a little bit more into the work that I've been making more recently, I've been really interested in kind of creating these little scenes or pictures with the animals that I find. I had been looking for these swans, and I just couldn't find them. And I walked into the Philly AIDS thrift, and they were sitting there on the shelf just like that. And it was really exciting. So half of my work, I think, is just finding what I want to use, finding that special piece. And it's really kind of like this fun hunt for me. So these guys were a pair, and they became, this piece was just called White Swan Theater. And then I also do, there are a lot of colors at this place that I haven't used yet. And so I try to find the color that I like and then do some research on it. So the next little series I made was from a color called Rosaline. And this is in a book about Old Fenton. And there's an original Rosaline swan in there. And this piece is actually, I kind of forgot to put the pictures, but I was in a show in China last year, and this piece is now, there's one at Shanghai Museum of Glass, and then this one's at the school that my show was at. And this piece, also relatively new, called The Lion and the Fox. And these two animals were original candy dish lids. I believe my pieces were from the Westmoreland Glass Company, but then I found out today in the library that they were actually originally a glass company called Atterbury Glass, and the patent for both of these animals is 1889. But what happened was, Atterbury maybe made a lot of the original molds, and then these different glass companies would reproduce them, take the molds from them. I've inadvertently become this kind of expert at looking at a piece of glass in a thrift store or something like that, and knowing which company it's made by. Westmoreland has a little insignia, which actually I think I have a picture of later on in the presentation. But this piece was I love these two animals, and there's a little fable about this piece that the fable of the lion and the fox is the more often you face your fears, the more you come to live with them side by side. So they're living with each other. So this is how I do some of my research, where I'll find a piece I like, and then see if it's where it's from, and that's pretty exciting for me to find it in the book. That was the original fox, and the insignias on the left-hand side. If you flip over a piece of Westmoreland glass, it looks like a little crown or a W, so you know that it's from that company. Some of the companies, such as the Indiana Glass Factory, they did not mark their glass, and there was kind of a theory that maybe that could have led or helped with their downfall because collectors couldn't place it and things like that. So always sign your work. I just had opened the show at the Museum of Craft and Design just on the 17th of this month, and I've been making these kind of larger scale pieces that I think of more as paintings, and this piece is the exact same height as me, so about 5'3", and just made out of this old barrel of old gray glass. I feel like I look at this piece and I was like, it was a dark winter, but so a lot of times I'll take the glass and the darker shades, I'll burn it, things like that, to get the different shading of colors in there. And there's some original scraps in there as well, some horses, hidden things, which you have to kind of be really up close into the piece to see. These are some more images of the show, which will be up through January if anyone's in San Francisco. This is me climbing all over a mountain of God. And this pile ended up becoming a piece in the show, and I just think Sarah's shirt there is kind of perfect for this image, because eventually this will run out, and right there now at this place there's enough glass for me to work for a lifetime, but eventually it will be gone, and these factories don't exist anymore. Fenton closed. It was bought and sold, and then finally it closed for good, I believe in 2011. So a lot of these colors were reinvented by this man named Charlie Goh, who was, he wasn't supposed to be a glass chemist, but got into the factory because Mr. Fenton didn't want to lose him on the church choir. And so he ended up becoming this master chemist at Fenton, who ended up reinventing a lot of these formulas of the color that they use. But these colors aren't really made by anyone else. So I think that that's why sometimes my work looks a little bit different, because the colors aren't being produced anymore. This blue in particular. And in the corner you can see some slag glass, which is after when the factory's changing over a color. So say they're going from white to blue, they would never really clean out the whole furnace. They would kind of just add some glass on top. And so at the bottom of the furnace, you would kind of get this swirly mix. So they would make a small run of slag pieces in their molds. And so if you see some old press glass that has, like, maybe a chicken dish has like a blue head and a white base, that's what that's from. And this piece is up in San Francisco now. And then, so this was the Fenton factory, and it's still there, but the gift shop's still open, but probably not for very much longer. And you know, a lot of these companies really helped build the community around them, and now, unfortunately, in a way, they kind of didn't keep up with current trends or styles. A lot of the glass I think that I used was probably sold on QVC, the Home Shopping Network, which was a big outlet for Fenton towards the end of their life. So I try to find these signature pieces, and you'll see, if you look hard, you'll see this hand in the piece upstairs. This was a soap dish, and I found today that this piece was original Atterbury mold too, from the late 1800s. I don't think that this piece is from then. I think that it's probably a Westmoreland reproduction, but still from probably, I would say, the 60s or 70s. And these were original Avon perfume bottles. So when you look at my piece, there's two lambs in it, and the heads of the lambs actually come off, and there's a spritz in there. And also there's like a swan statue that you can see the lid looks a little bit different color, and that top is removable, and there was perfume in there at one point. And these are some of the other, I actually didn't end up using the cat in this piece, but I used the camel, and the lion is my signature focal point a little bit of the piece. And I found those also in the books today, that the lion was an original late 1800s Atterbury mold, which then this piece was a Westmoreland reproduction of that. And they were all original candy dishes. So there's 8 animals in the piece, a sun and a hand of the maker, of God, maybe. And there's 2 hidden koalas, but they're all the way in the left-hand corner. You'll have to really search for those. So I think that maybe that's it for now. So, thank you.